Okay. Thank you. Okay, so welcome to the what is it? December PTAC meeting, Pedestrian Transit Advisory Committee meeting. Today we're going to talk about some very exciting things, including an update on McGrath, but we have a few kind of more administrative agenda items before we get to that. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started with roll call. First our PTAC members, and then I would love our guests to introduce themselves, and I'll talk about how our online guests can do that in a second. So start with roll call. Ted Alexander.
Here.
Ginny Alverson. Ginny's not here. Caroline Bodiger. Let's see, Caroline. Meredith Brown. Here. Laura Evans. Christopher Ferry.
Here.
Okay. Tim Gilman. Preston Gutelius.
Here.
Awesome. Thank you, Preston. Satoka Hirai will not be here tonight. Brenda Marvin.
Here.
Great. Steve Mulder. Barbara Myers.
Here.
Bianca Norkunis cannot be here tonight. Vitor Pamplona.
Here.
Zach Rosenberg.
Here.
Alessandra Sider, I'm here. Rob Stanzel.
Here.
Carol Lugaris. No Carol. Our ex officio city councilor, Willem Ba, who I'm sure is not here. Justin Schreiber and Kate White are not here, but our friend Lily from Mobility is here. Great. I forgot to ask, who is taking minutes tonight?
It's me.
Oh,
I'm over here typing.
Thank you. That makes
It's not
sense.
like working, I'm, actually typing.
I wouldn't shame you if you were. That would be fine. Okay, let's I just want everybody else who's here to introduce themselves, because you're very welcome to participate in this meeting as well. So I'm going to start with the folks in the room. When I ask you to, when I point to you, to say your name, what ward you're in Somerville, and then why you're here tonight. So we can start with you, Lily.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Worth. I am a member of Somerville's Mobility Division, and I joined about 5 months ago. I live in Ward 3, and I'm just so excited to be here. I've been to one PTAC meeting so far, and I just really appreciate all the work you guys do. Yeah, and I'm here to sort of sub in for Justin and Kate. I don't have a presentation tonight, but I'm here to answer any questions you guys might have and kind of just generally be a member of support from the city.
Thanks, Lily.
I'm Jason Leach. I live in Ward 1. I'm just a resident here to listen.
I'm Adele Watkins. I also live in Ward 1 and I'm interested in listening.
Fantastic. Thanks. Thanks for being here. On to our online guests. So when I call on you, you'll see a little button that pops up that says you can push to unmute yourself, and please tell us about yourself when that happens. So I'm going to start with Lori.
Hi, I'm Lori Siegel. I live in Ward 5 and I'm just here to listen.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Lori. Moving on to Mike Connolly.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. State Rep Mike Connolly. I got the email about the meeting. I'm about to head outside to get some steps in, and I figured I'd listen along. I'm always curious to hear everyone's feedback and concerns, and super excited at the opportunity here to ground McGrath. So thank you all for digging into this.
Thanks for being here tonight, Representative. Your continued advocacy on this project is much appreciated. So thank you. And finally, Philip Hood.
This is Philip and Christine Hood. We're in Ward 2. We've been reviewing the plans for the McGrath changes, and with horrified fascination. And we're just trying to understand why people are trying to do this.
right, thank you for being here. Yes, oh my goodness, Karen, please introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Karen Malloy. I'm in Ward 5. I'm here from Somerville Alliance for Safe Streets and the McGrath, and I'm a member from SAS for the, on the McGrath Boulevard Coalition. We were advocating, there were several of us from different organizations advocating, so I'm one.
And
Yes.
Karen is co-presenting with me tonight on McGrath, and I didn't even think that you needed to introduce yourself because you just need no introduction at this point. All right, thank you all so much. So we, one other just quick administrative thing. So all the PTAC members, I believe, have gotten a email from the mayor's office about the committee reappointment process. This was something that she had run on. Maybe you didn't get.
Did not get that.
Okay, great. Then don't worry about it. It might not even apply to us. And if it does, I'll let you know. And hopefully it doesn't, fingers crossed. Okay, on to subcommittee updates. Did design review meet again?
Yep.
Okay, special projects is on hold. From the community events side of things, we, since our last meeting, we had a really wonderful tabling at the Somerville Winter Farmers Market. We did that last Saturday. It was myself, Preston, and Ted, and Bianca volunteered, but then fell sick, so she couldn't join us. But we talked to a ton of people. We got a bunch of new newsletter signups. People are really interested to talk about, you know, what they were encountering on their streets. And we, had a great time. So our next, we don't really have like a schedule of tablings or events for 2025, but I'm sure we will start working with the city on that very soon. I think that's all. Any other updates from anybody on the committee? Okay, wonderful. Moving on to the kind of big ticket item of the night. We should vote on the November minutes.
This is in here, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, last thing, November minutes. Any requested changes from PTAC members on the minutes? Okay, great. I motion to approve the November minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, minutes passed. Thank you, Meredith. All right, Lily, I'm gonna look to you if anybody like raises their hand online, just because I don't want the meeting controls to pop up here.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So just a quick heads up, we're gonna report back on this meeting the best that we can, but we can't share photos of the in-progress designs that were shared at that meeting. So we're gonna try to paint a picture for you of what was discussed, but we're very happy, like after we're done with this section, to kind of zoom in on a map and dig in a little bit more if need be. So just some quick background on the McGrath Boulevard project. Broadly, this is a project that's been going on since, 2013, really, with the intent to turn McGrath Highway into a multimodal boulevard that is friendly to pedestrians, cyclists, people crossing the street who are, children, mobility impaired, all members of our community, and kind of knit the neighborhoods between Union Square and East Somerville together and beyond. So kind of the most recent round of activity on this project is that Mass DOT released their concept design for McGrath Boulevard in February at a public meeting earlier this year. Following that public meeting, there was a round of community advocacy throughout the spring and summer in Somerville that was primarily organized by the Somerville Alliance for Safe Streets, led by Karen. And they kind of rounded up a broad-based coalition of 19 organizations, 25 individuals, and we'll kind of summarize the advocacy, the specific points of that advocacy in a second. And they requested a meeting with Mass DOT leadership to kind of dig into those points. And then we on PTAC also wrote a letter. It was aligned with the McGrath Coalition, and we couldn't sign the McGrath Coalition's letter because we're technically a city committee and there's some conflict of interest up there. So we sent our own that was largely similar. And then the most recent thing that we're focusing on tonight is on October 28th. There was we had a meeting with Mass DOT's McGrath project team on the in-progress designs that will kind of turn into the 25% designs at some point in the near future. And that meeting had about 7 Mass DOT staff members, including the McGrath Boulevard project managers. It had 2 staff members from Somerville's mobility department, 2 elected officials, including Rep. Mike Connolly, who's here tonight, as well as Senator Pat Jalen, and then a few local advocates, including Karen and myself, and some others who are part of the McGrath Coalition. Anything to add, Karen?
Did you mention that the overpass was gonna be torn down?
No.
I'm sure you mentioned that, but the overpass by Brick Bottom will be torn down as part of this project, so that's a big feature, yes.
Definitely. Okay, so here's what we advocated in response to the concept designs. I'm just gonna quick summarize what PTAC advocated for and then kick it to Karen to summarize what the McGrath Coalition did. So in terms of road width, we advocated for a max of 3 travel lanes with pedestrian refuge islands at key points, frequent points throughout the street. And we voiced support for 4 lanes if 2 of them were bus lanes, center running along the entire corridor. We advocated to replace the median that was planned in the project, that was proposed in the designs, with that series of pedestrian refuges in favor of reallocating the space from the median to the edges of the corridor so that pedestrians and cyclists would have more room, but also the benefit of shade trees that were proposed for the median, but we would rather have them on the sides for people to benefit from them. Crossings, again, pedestrian refuges. In terms of sidewalks, we wanted them to be really wide, at least 12 feet in width. And that would not include space for like street furniture and green space, so just the walking area. And we wanted them to be very well lit with those kinds of amenities that I just mentioned. I hope that folks are familiar with the Otis Street overpass, but just briefly, there is currently a pedestrian footbridge that goes over McGrath on Otis Street. And there's a lot of support from community members, especially parents of children who go to school in East Somerville, to maintain that overpass. But there are also a lot of maintenance challenges with that overpass. So we kind of advocated that ideally the crossing at Otis Street would be safe enough to cross at grade, especially with small children. But if that can't be achieved, then the overpass should stay. We wanted more bus service. We wanted center running bus lanes. We wanted a lot of green space on the edges of the corridor. We were interested in using excess land for housing. And then we wanted, I mean, we're not a bike committee, but we are supportive of the bike infrastructure that is planned for this corridor. And we just want clear markings and accessibility features, especially to denote the space between pedestrian and cyclist areas.
So the McGrath Coalition advocates very similar points. And as Alessandra mentioned in the beginning, you know, the width, we didn't specify necessarily how many lanes. We weren't actually in agreement among ourselves about how many lanes. So we just wanted to narrow the lanes, do something, shift them the right of, what does it say here? Shifting the lanes to one side. Yes, so the median, we wanted the median, if possible, to be removed and to just narrow and reallocate the extra land to the edges for green space, housing, etc. Traffic calming measures, eliminate highway light. This is the thing, you look at it, it's like it still looked like a highway. So, you know, to basically, as Alessandra said, basically to design it for pedestrians first, maximize human scale uses. Let's see, Otis Street pedestrian overpass. I mean, we're aware that the issue with there are a couple of issues with the overpass. One is if there were to be an overpass there, it would need to be rebuilt. It's not ADA compliant. It would take some of the playground. But ideally, the street should just work properly. You know, I mean, the intersections should work properly for everybody for safety. So, and then we also advocate for, you know, and this actually came up during the meeting, if there's a way that we could, if there's a way that during the phases of construction that the removal of the overpass could come later, if it is to be well, it's going to be removed in one way or the other. It's either going to be removed and rebuilt, or it's going to be removed and the street will be done in a very safe way. That the overpass could be maintained for as long as possible. You know, this is a multi-year project, so you know, we assume that the overpass by Brook Bottom is going to get removed first, and that'll take time and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, hoping that the overpass could be in place for as long as possible. Let's see. And then should be eliminated once the road is narrowed and safe crossings are in place. I mean, this is an issue that, you know, has to do with timing and has to do with construction, contractors and that kind of thing too. So it's not, you know, it's gonna take some negotiation on that. Okay, let's see, stronger. So we didn't mention anything about center lane, but we do want stronger bus priority elements in whatever way, you know, whatever way that could happen. With the bus network redesign, you know, phase one is affecting Somerville in a couple of ways at the moment, but I mean, some of the bigger changes will be coming, and you know, it would be really great to put more, you know, more buses on McGrath. And then at that point have stronger bus priority elements in whatever way they can be designed. Let's see, green space on the edge, plenty on the edges, yes. Free up land wherever possible for housing. I mean, we've had some conversations about that since, you know, housing or other things, you know, parks, the whole area, the whole McGrath area, you know, corridor, that part of the corridor is going to be so, it's going to be so great for more housing in so many different ways that, and commercial development and whatnot. And so, who knows how this housing situation is going to wind up on the land that's reclaimed, but we want to keep that point in there nonetheless. Let's see. Ensure continuous travel and safe crossings. Yes, connect to other paths, with pedestrians sort of being the, you know, the main focus. Yes.
Okay, so this is the actual summary of what happened at the meeting. No more preamble. So major updates, kind of the biggest one is that the in-progress designs have the road width reduced further from 6 lanes to 5 lanes, which in and of itself, I think is an improvement. This is likely the narrowest that we can hope for. At least that's kind of the insight that we glean from stakeholders who are closer to this project than we are. In part because maintaining right turn lanes on the corridor can allow for pedestrian signal phases to be protected. So, you know, we can have signal phases that only allow pedestrians to go and then stop the rest of car traffic from turning into them. So that is certainly a win in terms of pedestrian safety. And then, you know, the in-progress designs do not include center running bus lanes. I think mostly because there isn't bus service planned for the corridor right now, at least along the entire length. But maintaining a 5 lane road width opens up the possibility for those center lanes to be turned into bus lanes in the future at some point without a lot of investment. Another update is that the median, even though we advocated for it to not be included in future designs, the current designs do maintain the median. And one of the things that I personally had not considered is that median helps prevent unauthorized left turns on McGrath. So that is another element of protection that the median does provide to all users, including pedestrians and cyclists. However, we are really interested in making sure that the median is as narrow as possible. So right now, the designs show that the median is about 8 feet wide at its narrowest, but 20 feet at some intersections. And something to keep in mind is that the wider the median, the longer pedestrians will have to cross, right? That makes the street longer to cross. And, you know, in talking to the city, their goal is to keep the median as narrow as possible, in part to maximize the space that we have to plant trees on the edges of the corridor. So if the median is narrow, that means we can allocate that space to the sides and plant bigger trees that will, you know, grow for a longer period of time. The sidewalks are planned to be 8 to 10 feet in width, and that does not include space for green space or other amenities. This is a little narrower than we had advocated for, but it's still within kind of best practice guidelines for pedestrian comfort. We didn't get a clear answer on target speed, so that's the speed limit, or design speed, which is usually set slightly higher than the speed limit, just to make sure that just to make sure that the speed limit is always going to encourage people to go slower. So that's not yet set, but our advocacy goal is 25 miles an hour on that corridor, which is kind of the fastest that a car can go to prevent fatal or serious injury if there's a collision. Another win is that the slip lane from Somerville Ave onto Medford Street, so that's kind of on the lower or the southern end of the corridor, that's been eliminated, and that has opened up even more land around what's kind of being referred to as this future Milk Square in a few plans. So that's kind of this like corner on the other side of McGrath from Brick Bottom, and the goal is to turn that into kind of a high development like commercial and residential square. And then finally, Poplar Street. So that's, you know, where that huge retention tank for water is being built right now. That street is slated to be a neighborway, which is high comfort, low volume, a low speed street. And as McGrath approaches Poplar Street, where it intersects, the lane width is reduced on McGrath, which is also great. Anything to add, Karen?
No, I think that's it. I will just add that we were overall pretty pleased. I mean, we got a lot of what we wanted, and they seemed to really kind of get the idea. So, I mean, there's still more work, you know, we still some issues, which I know you're gonna flip to next, but we were pretty pleased with a lot of this. Yeah.
Yes, speaking of the issues that we still have.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is certainly not the most detailed map in the world, because again, we can't share photos of the in-progress designs, but it's at least trying to highlight some of the key areas that we're trying to keep in mind. So Otis Street continues to be an area of concern, just because so many families use this crossing to get to their schools. I think the primary reason why we continue to be concerned is that, you know, if you see here, like here's Otis Street, and then right to the north of it is Broadway. And that is the project limit of the McGrath Boulevard project. So the designers have not paid the same, I think, like kind of innovative attention to that intersection as some of the other intersections. So it's not being fully redesigned. It doesn't have like full traffic calming at that intersection. And so the concern is that if kind of the most intensive traffic calming and like multimodal designs start happening like right before Otis Street, if you're traveling southbound, then that is a pretty like high risk place to kind of be like learning that now you're on a street where you're supposed to go slower and operate more safely. So kind of some things we threw around with the project team was, is there a possibility for a raised crossing at that intersection? You know, doing that would be outside of Mass DOT policy, because of the type of street McGrath is. But they have made an exception before in Somerville, near the Kensington, or at the Kensington connector by I-93. So we're hoping that we could convince them to do that again at Otis Street. We also really want to see a red, yellow, green signal at the Otis Street crossing rather than something like a hawk signal, which is confusing. So that and the goal would be for that signal to have a pedestrian phase that would regularly stop traffic instead of a pedestrian having to press the button and wait before they can actually cross. And then, you know, Karen mentioned that we're hoping that the footbridge can be maintained as far into construction as possible. And that's something that we have made clear to the project team, but ultimately the contractors have kind of the final say on, but the project team has said that they will try to advocate as much as possible to those contractors for that. Cross Street, which is right here, or no, right? Yes, right here. So Cross Street, the intersection on McGrath, in the designs, it is unsignalized, proposed to be unsignalized, but kind of pedestrians would cross in two phases. So there's one half of the crossing that happens slightly south, and then another half that happens slightly to the north. So pedestrians would still need to cross two lanes of traffic kind of in those two phases, which is not ideal in our minds. There's also this question of frontage roads. So these are kind of the yellow lines that I've highlighted on the map here. So there's one on Dana Street between Broadway and Pearl Street, and then another kind of south of Washington Street. And the project team said that the goal for these would basically be to be used like neighborway style streets. So high comfort for pedestrians and cyclists and non-car users. The kind of big thing that we want to keep in mind is that we want to ensure that cars understand that is going to be the correct behavior when they enter those frontage roads. So there needs to be some sort of like very clear traffic calming as soon as they enter, like speed humps or other sort of gateway treatments at those entrances. And then finally, Medford Street. So that's going to be right here. Okay, this is Medford Street, and then south of it, that one is Cross Street, sorry. So here at Medford Street, there's kind of this proposed maneuver for cyclists where if someone is coming south from Medford Street and wants to turn left onto McGrath Highway to go north, that turn is expected to be taken in two phases. So, you know, the cyclist would approach the intersection at McGrath. They would wait for one phase to cross McGrath, and then they would wait for another phase to actually cross the second way. And that we're just not convinced that cyclists will actually want to do that, and that they'll be put in a dangerous situation just based on their likely behavior. So we would like to see that changed as well.
Anything to add, Karen?
Okay, great. So just in terms of next steps in the timeline for this project, so right now what's happening is the project team is working on those designs, and they're planning on holding another public meeting similar to the one in February, once they get to, or as they near 25% design. I think just for those of us on PTAC, we should plan to write another advocacy letter shortly after those that next round of design is released. We don't have a date on that meeting yet, but you know, we'll let you know as soon as we do. And then once they have finalized the 25% designs, there will be what's called a design public hearing in summer 2025, or at least expected for that. This is more of a like official meeting, less for like feedback, and more like kind of the project team needs to do this to fulfill requirements. And after that point, it's going to be difficult to make like major design changes to the project. So I think spring and summer will be kind of our final huge advocacy push for this project. So that's going to be really important. And then, you know, the goal for start of construction is 2027, 2028, with a goal of completion in the early 2030s. And we'll see, you know, we'll just see. Yeah, anything else to add, Karen? On any of this?
No, I think you covered everything, yeah, it's, pretty exciting project and, it's a long time coming, really, this. So, yeah.
Truly. Okay, we have a good amount of time, I think like 35 minutes for discussion, questions, all that good stuff. So I will open the floor. If folks in person have questions or comments, please just raise your hand. If you have a question online, if you're a PTAC member, I mean, you can just unmute yourself, but best practice would be to raise your hand. And then if you are a guest, then you will definitely have to raise your hand so that we can unmute you. So floor is open. Yes, Ted.
Hi, yeah, I just had a question about the frontage roads. I was wondering why they need to be retained at all, and if that's something that you had asked at the meeting, because it seems like they're just part of the right of way that could be, just made part of whatever design is there.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but I think it's a good question, Ted. I think the reason they gave for not wanting to just incorporate it into the full right of way is that there were residential housing right next to the frontage roads, and they were concerned about people pulling out from their driveways, like directly into
Yeah.
McGrath. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I remember as well, yeah. Safety, yeah, so safety and, yeah, making it into a neighborhood, making it into a neighborhood type street.
Are you kind of thinking they would be used for something else though, Ted?
Well, I'm just thinking, I mean, if that concern makes sense, if McGrath is still a relatively kind of high speed, high volume road, but if they're really designing it down so it's 25 mile per hour, if that happened, 25 mile per hour street with some traffic calming features and so forth, that should be theoretically should be the kind of street that you could just pull out onto from your driveway more safely. But so that the fact that that's the response makes me kind of wonder if the overall design is going in that direction or if it's still gonna be more of a highway looking thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point.
I will jump in and say that because the city had some extensive conversations about these two pieces of frontage road, and I could be wrong, but I believe that the one north of Pearl Street, those are actually two city streets, so they may be under our jurisdiction, whereas the section below Washington Street is part of McGrath Highway. So we are definitely looking to kind of make these calm and kind of safe to be on, and what changes we can make as a city that aren't under MassDOT jurisdiction, we certainly will.
Regarding the bus lanes, how do we square the fact that we are recommending reducing the median and putting bus lanes at the center lanes, as opposed to the edge of the highway? Because
Well,
then you won't have so much space for pedestrians or bus goers to be there.
You're thinking like when they try to get on or disembark the
on and
bus.
off.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that they would handle that is that that's where those pedestrian refuges would come in, where at points along the corridor, that's where the infrastructure would be opened up to actually have more space to accommodate people disembarking, getting on the buses at the actual
So you wouldn't
crossings.
use the space of the median, that's what you're saying.
That's my understanding, but I'm sure that the actual transportation planner in the room can speak more to how that would work.
Yeah, I'm gonna put my Justin hat on here, and I know that Justin worked on this quite a lot, and I don't remember the details, but he's basically worked on a way to sort of recommend designs to the state that would not preclude the possibility of having bus lanes and bus platforms
Oh, I
at
see.
strategic spots along the corridor. So the understanding is that the state may not want to put that in now because there's no bus service planned. However, we want to strongly recommend and show that this can be designed such that if bus service were to come, we would have the ability to, plop down stations quite easily. So that's kind of the approach that Justin has taken, make sure we identify spots for these platforms so that what we're designing today does not preclude the possibility of future bus rapid transit on this corridor.
I guess in the beginning, when P-TECH wanted the center bus lane, the whole idea would be like, get rid of the median and run the bus down the middle, right? Yeah, so I mean, it's, I guess, who knows how it's gonna happen in the future, right? Cause it'll be after it opens and all that, so maybe it'll be in the center, maybe it won't, but, yeah.
Preston, go ahead.
I was wondering if you could clarify at all for the lane, for the number of lanes. Is it like 5 max, or is that more or less the whole length? Because I remember from the old materials from last spring, a lot of the sections between intersections was just 2 by 2 for 4 lanes total.
Yeah, so from there were some sections that were like that, but I think most of the corridor was still 6 lanes, right, Karen?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this would be like, most of the corridor would have 3 lanes southbound, 2 lanes northbound, because that reflects traffic patterns. But then there would still be some areas that would have even fewer than that, is that right?
I
Like
think
by Poplar Street.
yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I can, yeah, I didn't bring any. We can't show them anyway, so, yeah.
Okay.
All we know
yeah,
is that this, go ahead, Kirsten.
That's fine. I was just I was a little confused. It sounded like it was almost going up and then maybe back down from what those plans were, because that definitely had some big sections as you get towards O'Brien. Most of that bridge, that overpass, the Blue Lower was just 4, and a lot of the other sections, but maybe it was minority total.
Yeah, I think this project is confusing because it does have different like lane widths throughout the corridor. But as far as we can tell, nothing has been widened on the corridor
Okay.
from previous plans. It has only been narrowed.
Thank you.
Yes,
That's
go
the
ahead.
question.
Of course. Go ahead, Representative Connolly.
Oh, hey, yeah, just listening in, and I had some similar questions, and to the last question, my sense was there's a pretty significant stretches that are 4 lanes, and that reflects the road diet. And then the update of going from 6 to 5 represents narrowing some of those intersections, but that's just how I remembered it. And then on the question of the slip lanes, the Edmund Street, the Dana Street, as I recall them saying at the meeting, one of their concerns was there are so many driveways that you'd really lose the continuity of, protected bike lanes and sidewalks, just because there's that many driveways there. You would keep interrupting kind of that continuity of having protected bike lanes. So just wanted to add that, but yeah, the 6 to 5 lanes definitely jumped out at me because as I recall it, there were many stretches of 4 lanes, which is so great to see. And it's really nice that MassDOT implemented that road diet ahead of time. I think the standard way would have been to talk about cutting down some of the lanes for a long time, but they've already gone ahead and implemented it up in that more northern stretch, which is just great to see. Thanks.
Thank you. Those are really helpful clarifications, and thank you for remembering better than we did. Other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
You may have spoken to this already, but did you get a sense of when they're gonna talk to the contractors about the Otis Street Bridge? Do you think that's something they'll have some clarity on by the 25% meeting, or?
I don't think so.
Clear? Okay.
I think it'll be once they actually put the designs out to bid and then have the contractors.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Like that's when it'll
Yeah.
all kind of start. So
Yeah.
we can look back on that in 5 years from now.
Okay.
Right, yeah. Yes, Philip.
Yes, I'm just wondering, one of my big concerns about this design since I first reviewed the few plans that they've actually shown on the websites is how many light cycles it takes to cross the McGrath, the reconstructed McGrath, both at Washington Street and at Somerville Avenue. At the moment, it takes 2 light cycles to go across at Washington Street and 2 to 3 at Somerville Ave, depending on exactly what you're trying to do. To me, neither is acceptable, but both all 3 plans that I've looked at, which are again the only ones the public has seen, make it longer, at least 3 light cycles. So is this even going into the plans? Are people considering this? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. So Karen, definitely fill in if I'm not remembering anything from the meeting, but also Lily, if you have more details on this. My understanding is that we don't have exact timing for how long a pedestrian crossing is supposed to take right now on the corridor. But I mean, that's something that we're kind of thinking about in terms of advocating for, like with the median, for example, right? If the median is really wide, then that means that the crossing times are going to be increased because it just increases the amount of space between each side of the corridor. So at least from what I can tell, we don't know right now, but it's definitely something that we also want to see minimized as much as possible, like you're speaking to. But maybe Karen or Lily have more details on that front.
I don't, gosh, I don't remember anything having 3. But I don't remember it coming up very much in discussion either, so.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I also don't have additional information, but I can definitely take that back to our team so we can make sure that we're scrutinizing that. That's certainly something that we always keep in mind, trying to make sure we're having a comfortable experience for pedestrians, but not short, not making things unnecessarily long, which then encourages unsafe behavior.
Yeah. So long story short, Philip will continue to advocate for very short crossing distances and encourage you to do the same. Any other thoughts? Questions? I guess my big question at this point, considering the administration that we just elected, is, I know we've had funding to start in 2027 through the Boston Region MPO. Are we still like that is set, right? That's happening no matter what, question mark. But then do we still need more funding after that? Like, I'm just wondering about this is definitely going to happen, right? Or is that now also up in the air? Which I guess is mostly a question for either Lily or Rep. Connolly, if you have insight into that.
I'm afraid I don't. We've been pretty laser focused on just dissecting the design and making sure we have comments from MassDOT. The funding piece is a bit unclear for me, but I'm happy to ask when I talk to Brad.
Go ahead, Philip.
So this is actually Christine, Phil's wife.
Great.
You talked a lot about traffic calming measures and so forth. My observation as a pedestrian, and I walk all over this area, is that traffic calming encourages road rage. And from everything I can tell, nobody respects the lanes, nobody respects the lights. This applies, I would say, to cars, pedestrians, and I don't want to say cyclists. I will generalize that to anybody on a 2-wheeled vehicle. We have a lot of motorized bicycles. We have a lot of motorized scooters, and they act like they own the road. And I'm concerned with what's being proposed here is it's going to be open season, but on steroids. What will be done to actually make things work?
Yeah. I mean, I think what I would say is that, we're kind of operating on the framework of Vision Zero, which is which is kind of the city's framework, and I think is kind of what's guiding this project as well, which is this belief that like if we try to change, individual people's behavior, then we're just going to keep chasing kind of this individual change forever. But if we change the actual structure of our streets, then we have more of a hope of actually like keeping speed safe, so that if there is a collision, if someone does make a human error, then it's much less likely to kill them or seriously injure them. So I think, kind of I guess the thing that I always think about is like, there are always going to be individual people who are not acting in great ways that are endangering people. But what we can do and what's proactive is designing our streets in a way that makes it less likely that their dangerous behavior is actually going to result in something really, really bad happening. And when I look at the designs that are being proposed by Mass DOT, I'm under no illusion that like every single driver is going to love what's being proposed for this street necessarily. But I do think that it will actively make it harder for them to go really fast on the street, or for them to run into a pedestrian or run into a cyclist, because they're going to be separated adequately from one another. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I don't know if my colleagues have things to add on that front.
I think that's a great response, and it really sums up, a lot of the sort of goals of Vision Zero. I guess I would add to that this, or at least from the city side, we have a limited number of tools in our toolbox, and we try to use those to the best of our ability to get the results we want. And for this particular project, we know that the status quo is really quite bad and very unsafe. And these changes, they may not solve every single problem, but they will make things considerably better and considerably slower, which we know makes things safer for people, particularly people outside of cars, but also people who do drive. We've had really good success with other elements of traffic calming in sort of more neighborhood context in Somerville. And we know that this isn't a neighborhood context, but we're really trying hard to bring some of those principles to it. And at the end of the day, there may be,
I don't think they walk the street here.
Enforcement
I
elements.
really don't think they walk here.
I'm sorry.
What's that?
I'm sorry, I really don't think you walk the streets here. The changes that have been made have been horrible. What they just was done on Center Street is just a disaster. I'm sorry, I disagree with you on almost everything you just said. But I understand there's limited time, so I'm not going to go into it. But
I mean, that's all right. I appreciate hearing that. And we do, in terms of feedback, we really do want to hear from people who live in the neighborhoods, and a lot of us also live in these neighborhoods. But I will add that one of the ways we figure out whether something's working is by collecting evidence, collecting volume of traffic and speeds and stuff. So we do try to make decisions based on evidence, but not just on that evidence. We do want to hear people's experiences too.
Have you collected evidence of violations at existing traffic signals, for example, and particularly violations by two-wheeled operators, scooters, cyclists, etc.?
Our current sort of set of traffic observation data that we have doesn't specifically highlight violations. It's more focused on speeds and kind of turning movements and volumes. But I think we do have, the mobility division doesn't necessarily engage in the enforcement side of things. Our focus is really to help design the streets so that everybody is going slower. Although I do acknowledge that enforcement is an ongoing issue for all users of the road.
Brenda, go ahead. Brenda, if you were speaking, we cannot hear you.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So, I just want to say that there have been a lot of changes to the streets, and it might, listen, I totally understand as a pedestrian, you know, I hate seeing drivers on, whether they're driving a car or a bike, speeding down the roads. But it might take a little bit of time for drivers and cyclists to adapt to the new streets. And I'm really hopeful that, you know, through driver's ed and new drivers coming onto the streets will like learn how to drive appropriately with the new street designs. And you know, things like having the pushed out bus stops that do, you know, it stops the traffic behind them. It does make things, it makes the road travel slower, which is safer for everybody. And again, I know we're talking about, you know, 5 to 6 lanes on McGrath Highway, but I'm just hoping that there's an overall encouragement for people to slow down throughout the entire city as a result of the changes going on all the streets.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Brenda. Yes, Julie, you should be, oh, okay, you should be good to unmute now.
Thank you. I live on Mansfield Street. I'm a pedestrian. I have a child who bikes. I own a car. I drive on McGrath, I would say, at least once a day, the entire length of the project. At best, it takes 3 minutes to get through. Given the situation where they've now eliminated lanes, we're now up to, on worst, 25 minutes to just go through the project area. And I'm wondering, since I live right around that zone, during this 4 years of construction and after, what is going to be done to curtail the immense amount of traffic, which is now going to probably worse cause air pollution to all the local area?
Are you talking about just during construction specifically, Julie?
During construction, which is 4 years, plus post-construction when we're talking 2 to 3 lanes max, and at the moment, and which is approximately what it is right now, but in some places I imagine smaller, and yet we still have cars here in the city. So, right, so at the moment it takes 25 minutes in high traffic times to make it through. So it sounds like it will take more. So how are we going to divert cars off of this highway so that they're not as cars sitting in traffic, but as humans breathing in the air that is coming from all of these cars' exhausts?
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that great question. I have 2 thoughts, and then again, appreciate input from others. But one is that, you know, I think the big, huge hope with McGrath is that right now it is really only built for cars. And with the reconstruction, the hope is that it would be a lot more comfortable for people to use many more modes to get along the corridor. So whether that be walking or biking, or, you know, taking an e-bike, for example, which can be very expedient. The hope is that it will be a lot easier for more people to shift away from using cars on McGrath. The goal is not to like force anybody out of their cars by any means, but more to say, like, if you have the option and would prefer to not get around by a car, then now you have the option to do that on McGrath, and that would reduce the amount of cars that are using the corridor every day, which would hopefully free it up in terms of traffic. The other thing that I will say, which is just kind of a counterintuitive thing that we know from just data where other projects like this have been undertaken in cities that have had urban highways and have had them either torn down or converted into multimodal boulevards like this, is that the traffic just kind of naturally diverts itself, or it goes away or just disappears. And, you know, I think like years and years of, you know, state highways trying to like expand highways or add lanes to them has, there's also data to show that that does not decrease traffic. It in fact worsens traffic by inviting more cars on the road. So the hope is that this project will kind of reverse that trend of just building, only to find more traffic. You know, I don't know. I think that there might be increased traffic like the first year of the project, for example, but then I think it'll kind of even out, or at least I think that's the hope from previous observations that we've had with similar projects. Anything else that I'm missing?
I would just add, and I don't have the data with me, but Mass DOT did say that the traffic on McGrath actually has decreased over time, like within, you know, say the last 10 or 15 years. Just by either less people driving or, you know, finding other methods of getting through or whatever, so.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, I don't think that would be an accurate statement, having lived here for 15 years and driving on this road basically daily. But I understand they do it differently. So,
Yeah. We appreciate your comments and sharing, and we will certainly keep them in mind as we continue to work on this project with Mass DOT. Logan, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, yeah, just as like another person working in like a transportation related field, about the traffic, often slowdowns are not, they're not caused by people driving parallel to each other in multiple lanes. It tends to be issues at the intersections. So part of the reason a lot of studies will find that different designs reduce traffic when you would expect fewer lanes to increase it. Part of it is like improvements at intersections sort of create gains in speed that offset anything you would expect from losing lanes. Like stuff happening at the intersections tends to be more important as far as like overall time spent sitting there than like the amount of lanes. So it's not, you know, it's like very complicated why a lot of these designs tend to keep traffic similar or reduce them, but definitely like losing lanes sounds a lot scarier than it often tends to be. I'm thinking about all the times I've like been stopped in traffic where, you know, it doesn't matter that we've had a ton of lanes because there's somebody doing something just weird or unexpected and they're, you know, or someone is blocking multiple or just assorted other reasons that tended to cause the slowdown. So just hopefully that's a little bit reassuring for folks.
Yeah, thank you, Logan. Okay, we are nearing the end of our time for this agenda item, but are there any additional, just in the final minutes, questions, concerns, hopes and dreams for this project as we continue to think about advocating with Mass DOT? Okay, awesome. Thank you all for your thoughts. We will definitely continue to keep them all in consideration as we continue working with the state on this project. And thank you, Karen, so much for being here and for your advocacy and for presenting and all that. We are going to move on to an agenda, I think just our last agenda item, just reflecting on our work over the year on our committee and planning for 2025. This is a little bit more inside baseball than a massive project that's going to redesign a full corridor, a major corridor in Somerville. So, you know, you're obviously welcome to stay. This is still very much a public meeting. But you are also no hard feelings if you would rather move on with your night and not think about PTAC's inner workings, and that is totally okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, so over the I just pulled together a few numbers and summaries for us to kind of think about what we actually did over this past year. and help inform what we're hoping to do next year. So this past year, I think kind of the biggest thing that we did is we welcomed 8 new members to our committee, which has been so wonderful. We already have 2 folks who are serving as new officers, Brenda and Satoko, and Rob, who is serving as an on-hold subcommittee. No pressure or anything. It's just wonderful that you volunteered and are interested. We also restructured our subcommittees with input from new members to make sure that those subcommittees are actually reflecting everybody's priorities. So now we have community events, we have design review, and we have special projects. I think those reflect well kind of the actual deliverables that we're able to achieve on this committee as a volunteer committee, as well as some of our strategic objectives. We wrote 4 letters, 4 advocacy letters, which is continuing our rate of 1 letter every 3 months. That's been consistent since 2022. We wrote them on continued advocating to the mayor for continued funding for the transit benefits program, which has continued in part about like, I think some parts of the project have not, or some parts of the funding have not continued, but some have. We wrote a letter on the West Broadway concept design. West Broadway is currently being reconstructed. Also on McGrath, which we just talked about extensively. And then on the parking pilot that is currently being planned for Elm Street as well. We reviewed and provided feedback on 6 projects, both in the city and with the state. So McGrath, the Davis Square Commercial Area Plan, West Broadway, the parking pilot on Elm Street, Tuff Street, and Western Pearl Street. A lot of advocacy this year. We had 5 teams of invited speakers, not including our ex officio members on mobility. So we had Somerville Engineering talk about their process for creating their 5-year repaving plans. We had students from one of our members, Carol, who is a professor at the Harvard Grad School of Design. She had her students work in teams to kind of take on projects within Somerville as kind of the city of Somerville as their client for improvements for pedestrians and cyclists. We talked to Adam Polinsky from Mobility, who's not an ex officio member, so I counted him, but he came to talk to us about traffic signals for pedestrians and transit with a focus on Davis Square. We talked to the Somerville Police Department about their approach to traffic safety and focused on their municipal road safety grant that they have been applying for every year and how we can continue to advocate that they use it in the most responsible and effective way. And then we finally talked to Eric Weisman, who is the head of ops for DPW, about their plans for snow clearing with a focus on pedestrians and transit, so bus stops, sidewalks, if there's a major snow event. We just increased the number of subscribers to our newsletter, so now we have almost 150, which is great. We became an official co-organizer of the Streetwise event series with the Bicycle Committee and with SAS. And then we had 8 events, 5 of which were tablings. We held 2 community walks on areas that are being reconstructed by the city. And then we had a nice little social gathering for our new members. And then finally, this is just kind of, I wanted to take stock of, you know, when we did this process last year, we set some priorities and wanted to kind of see what we actually made progress on. So our high priorities were onboarding our new committee members and restructuring our subcommittees. Both of those we have done, I think, quite successfully. We also really wanted to engage on the issue of school mobility. For example, like how students are getting to the Edgerly and Capuano with the closure of Winter Hill. We couldn't quite find like a tangible issue to get engaged on with that. And also our committee members who are parents are very busy, understandably, because they are raising children.
It needs to be a special project in the new year.
Totally, 100%. We did engage on enforcement. We met with SPD, and we also identified an ongoing mechanism for feedback on those grants so that we can continue to advocate for how they use that funding. we wanted to keep monitoring the parking and curb use study, but every time I asked the city about it, they were like, we don't have any updates, unfortunately. So it didn't really make sense for us to talk about that in committee, but hopefully we'll be able to engage on that in the new year. And pair that with the discussion of the parking minimums that were just removed from the city, which I think is just an exciting thing that we should kind of dig into for the implications of. We wanted to monitor the bus network redesign, which, I mean, we didn't do this, but the MBTA launched phase 1 of the bus network redesign by kind of converting half of the 86 into 109. And I think we'll continue to engage with them on, you know, the next phases and find where we can be of use there. We did our annual snow clearing meeting. We did not monitor the installation of no turn on red signs, but I think we should definitely put that back on our list of things to do for next year. We did definitely engage on the safe streets ordinance. I think that was another one of our letters that I did not actually include on that first slide, so I'm sorry. We definitely wrote a letter about that. And that ordinance did pass, so that's good. And then all of these other things we did not get to. We did not talk about extending the green line, which is probably a huge project. We did not talk about making sure that the sidewalks are clear from trash and recycling bins. It sounds like the bike committee and SAS have been kind of talking with DPW about that, which doesn't mean that we couldn't also, but just that there's some work being done on that. And then one of the things that we've had kind of on hold for a long time is this idea of like building a rubric for how to assess the city's projects and plans so that we can kind of have like a checklist of things that we just want to make sure are included or have been considered. That we just did not have the bandwidth for that this year, but could get, you know, keep thinking about doing it in the future. I don't think it would be any sort of rush. So all in all, you know, we got a lot of stuff done, but also didn't get a lot of stuff done because there's just a lot of stuff to do. Okay, so that is kind of all I wanted to share in terms of what we actually did over this past year. But I would love for us to talk about what we want to do in 2025, whether it's kind of revisit a lot of these things that we didn't get to do in the past year, or something completely new. One thing that I would really love to engage on in the new year, that I don't think we even really talked about this year, is, oh no, it's something that now I'm forgetting. But it'll come to me as we discuss. So please, the floor is open and hopefully I will remember what I wanted to do. As you all say the things that you want to do.
I guess I'll just echo again, the school mobility thing. I think there is opportunity there to engage with parents. I know that on Fridays, per our group chat, sometimes some of the parents that live in Winter Hill will like band together and do like a bus trip together. And I think maybe if we could like latch onto that once or twice, it could be an opportunity just to talk and get ideas for how to further support and like opportunities that may not, you know, be obvious. Yes, I'm not part of that because I don't live in that area, but I do think like we could probably engage with people where they're at.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah. I love that idea. Do you think they would be open to like having PTAC tag along on one of those?
Carol is like in that area. And
oh, great.
Probably okay. Would be open to like or something. I could like take the bus out there and then ride the bus to school. Counterintuitively, but cool. Yeah, I think the parents would be open to it.
Awesome. I hope you include them in the minutes.
Yeah.
Just so I don't lose sight of it.
Yeah.
I remember the thing I wanted to say, which is that, you know, earlier this year, we had a community member who shared her story of being hit by a bike on the community path. And, you know, we as a committee were really interested in working with the city on identifying like appropriate mechanisms for preventing those kinds of crashes on the community path, whether it be like signage of, expected behavior or, some more intensive traffic calming mechanism like rumble strips on the bike path. But I think that is something that I would really love to continue thinking about and engaging on, just because it's something that, in our tablings and community walks, like people bring it up all the time. Like, I'm a pedestrian on the community path. I don't feel safe because the bikes go really, really fast. And I think it's something that, other communities have at least tried to find strategies on, like the Minuteman up north, or in Cambridge on their paths. Yeah, so that's something that I would love to continue working on in the new year.
I would definitely second looking into what can be done about best practice for getting people to negotiate passing each other in a safe and friendly way on the community path. It's definitely I both in the interactions when people are speaking either at meetings or at the tabling, there was at least a few people that showed up talking to that. And just in public discourse, there seems to be a lot of frustration about interactions on the path. So how to make that a more welcoming place for more people would be great. I'd also like to circle back to doing more on the parking and curb use and the no turn on red auditing.
Awesome. Thanks, Preston. Super helpful.
I believe one item we never really touched as an item in this list is just the state of bus shelters and how we can advocate for improvements in there and facilitate, going in and out of buses without any accidents there. I do think there is just not enough information out there for us. So maybe there's a way to review or to create that information, or at least advocate for more data in that side of the of our work.
In terms of like what makes like a good bus shelter or like a safe bus shelter?
Or how to improve in and out, how to make sure, if there are accidents coming in and out buses, we want to know. I don't think we have any data right now in the city that is about those particular issues that people might have. But it's, it's part of public transit, so we need to keep an eye on it. Especially during the winter with snow and so on.
Yeah, I wonder if that's represented in the SPD's crash database at all, like whether it happened like involving bus infrastructure. But yeah, I think that's something to look into for sure.
I haven't seen such a map, but I imagine that with the data that we have, we could probably pair the crash database with the bus stops and try to like figure out how many are within a certain radius of a bus stop. That may not get to exactly the information that you're looking for, but it is at least some metric. I'd be happy to look into that because I'm also interested in this question.
Thanks.
I'll see what I can find out.
Go ahead, Ted.
One possible idea would be to do some kind of, and I think I've talked about this before, but do some kind of looking back at projects that have already been done or maybe recently completed and kind of collect our thoughts and maybe some public feedback to the extent that's feasible about those projects. I mean, as we heard in the meeting today, like there are people who are upset about some of the new street designs. Some of those concerns may be quite legitimate. Like I personally, some of the designs people complain about, I like, and seem good to me. But if there are kind of issue, like if this certain of the traffic calming features are causing more road rage or like really, causing problems for the bus to, be able to make turns or whatever, it'd be good for us to find out about that and then incorporate those ideas into future feedback we give to the city on future projects. And if they are working well, I'd like to find ways to celebrate that and kind of maybe write a letter to the city like, this project is great, thanks for doing it after the fact. So either way, I think it'd be something to look into.
Yeah, I wonder if I think that's a really good point, Ted. I I wonder if there's a way to more like systematically incorporate that kind of work into our PTAC meetings, like, making a note like, okay, this project finished in this year, so let's make a note on like our Google Calendar to like check back on that project in a year and like see what, the benefits or whatever outcomes there are, just like quick summary, as like an agenda point in a meeting, I think probably could be feasible. Do you think that would be feasible, Lily, from the city's perspective?
Sorry, what specifically?
Like-
To have a retrospective look at what we're.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Like the more feedback that we can get on these installations, the better, in my opinion. I mean, we're definitely trying to monitor outcomes as best we can, and we'll find, like I was mentioning before, like we look at speeds and volumes and we try to figure out, like, are people actually going slower? Where is traffic going now? Are we, have we caused any new problems? So we do try to look at these sorts of metrics as best we can, but we also want to hear directly from people's experiences. Like that's just gonna help us iterate and get better and better at this. So yeah, I think we would definitely be welcoming that kind of feedback.
That did remind me of one other specific thing that I would really love to revisit next year, which I think it was I think it must have been last year now, but we had a meeting shortly after the Green Line opened about the state of all the stations, and especially the station areas, and like how safe they were and what improvements we wanted to see. I don't know how much work has actually been done since we had that meeting. But I know that one of the stations that continues to come up in terms of needing more infrastructure is Magoon Square and needing a crosswalk across Wall Street. So I like that specifically, I would love to work on, but also just broadly thinking about the station areas, and revisiting them, I think would be useful.
I will say to your specific point about the crosswalk, I know exactly where you mean. We've had this come up a lot with various different constituents. My understanding is that our engineering division is looking into kind of the feasibility of getting that done. We would like to. There are certain sort of constraints there that have made it difficult, but we're definitely looking into it. Because it's definitely a spot where people already cross. There's a lot of desire there.
I'm assuming there's no timeline
No
on that yet.
timeline, unfortunately.
Good to know that. Anything else you want to see us do next year, or just stuff that you really liked that we did this year and want to see us continue into next year?
I do really like the enforcement conversations that we have been having. I'm not sure exactly how to make use of their time in a better way or try to help them out somehow. But we need to find what we can do there to take this to the next level in our relationship with the SPD. But I think we have never, I don't know what city, but like PTAC has never talked about enforcement since you came on, Alessandra. And I do think those conversations are very difficult to have, but they are needed. And we need to adjust, our method of enforcement to the new reality we live today.
Since I came on, we did have 4 meetings about enforcement in 2023. So we haven't never talked about it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly something we can continue engaging on. And I know the question of automated enforcement is something that other advocates in the city are also interested in exploring, and the feasibility. Yeah, for sure.
I guess it'd be good to keep monitoring the status of the advocacy and et cetera. For that to be clear too.
On a line similar to that, extending the green line, I really would like to see some type of not north-south mini bus pilots going on in the city. Collect some data. Let's understand if this is even something that residents would like to have, or which routes would be more interesting to have before the city commits to anything more permanent. But I do think this is something a lot of people ask, and we just haven't seen any movement for years now. Maybe there is no solution, but I think we should push to see if there is one through pilots and other means that are just temporary for now.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, because I remember back when there was another, I think one of your predecessors, Lily, they had been assigned to like explore the feasibility of some sort of like north-south connector route with some sort of micro transit. And I doubt that is still being continued in the department, question mark, I don't know.
You know, I haven't heard about it, but I'm happy to do some digging and see if there were any kind of conclusions there. But I've definitely heard this idea tossed around by various different people, including even city councilors a couple times, so it's definitely, I think it's a thing worth considering. So I'm happy
Bundle
to
of
see.
service.
Is that?
Sorry. I just always think about that with when they were proposing it for the casino to run across the river and then get across 93 with our hills.
Gondola.
Oh my gosh, gondola, yes.
Well, they have it in Spain. Why couldn't they do it here?
Yeah.
All over Latin America, it's very popular with geographical challenges, rivers, and steep hills.
I mean, hey, if we could get the casino to pay for it.
Let's do it.
Related to the north-south bus direction or transit, there's definitely multiple times at the winter market, did people bring up the 85 bus not being there anymore? So there's definitely a demand from residents to have more, buses that connect through the kind of that center area up on the hill.
True. All right. If there are no further thoughts or hopes or dreams at all, just in the world, then thank you all so much. If you do have things that you want to see us accomplish next year, work on next year, please feel free to shoot me or any other of the officers an email, and we can incorporate it into our plans for next year. Kind of the next steps in terms of this planning, over the next few weeks, I'm going to work on our annual report, and hopefully bring that to the committee either in January or February for review. And that will have kind of a summary of all the stuff that we talked about tonight, so that we can start planning for our meetings in 2025. Yeah. Is anyone here to give public comment with our remaining 5 minutes? All right, wonderful. Thank you again. Have a really, really wonderful holiday. We have some people in the chat. Thanks, everybody. Great. And I'll see you again in January. Stay warm and eat cookies. Thank you.